Dialogue and how we communicate with one another is a subject that is central to my life. It's also at the heart of what we are trying to achieve in our The America I Want Is campaign. Dialogue is different from discussion. Discussion, like words such as concussion and percussion, which share the same Latin root, has a feeling of breaking things apart and then reassembling them. Dialogue, on the other hand, is a process by which we listen to someone else's ideas and then allow them to sit quietly alongside our own. We hold them in suspension just for a moment. And it is this process of privately weighing alternative points of view that can encourage us to adjust the way we think. Other people typically don't change our minds. We change our own. Which is why I would say dialogue is a way of life, because implicit in dialogue is the willingness to adjust our thinking based on what others can teach us. If we're closed to changing our minds and simply want to defend our positions, then we don't have dialogue. We have argument. Now, of course, we also dialogue with ourselves. I do it frequently. It was on one such dialogue that I came up with this image, a suitcase. And the image changed the way I live my life. So let me tell you a little bit about my suitcase and what I discovered when I opened it. I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and although I would live in Argentina, Brazil, and later England, my parents, who were middle-class, end-of-empire British subjects, decided it would be to my greatest advantage if I were to be raised and educated English. 1,000 years of history, all the kings and queens of England, Shakespeare, Churchill, the Battle of Britain, the proper way to use my knife and fork, porridge, spam and spankings, learning the puzzling art of being a boy who could be seen but not heard, and then sent off to boarding school where I was neither seen nor heard, with its shivering cold showers to make a man out of me and stiffen the upper lip. Now, the result of all this well-intentioned instruction, besides hating cold houses and cold showers, was that I stepped out into the world as a young adult with a suitcase in my hand, packed almost entirely by others. What I find so extraordinary about this suitcase to this day is that I was never consulted about what went into it. Not once. You see, as a child, I lived under a benevolent dictatorship, or perhaps I should say a benevolent Politburo. Teachers, coaches, family and friends, and the friends of family all felt perfectly entitled to pack their stuff into my suitcase. And I just sat there watching as others put together my first view of the world. And growing up, that view of the world became the most important part of who I was. It was my identity. It was me. And I would defend it as if my life depended on it. But at one point, it occurred to me that my precious identity was almost entirely accidental, and that I had almost nothing to do with it. Because if that kindly nurse in the hospital where I was born had switched me with the infant in the crib next to me, and we know such things do happen, I would now see the world through a totally different lens and might be defending a very different position. Now, of course, we all need a suitcase when embarking on a journey. They are the indispensable starter kits for our lives. They contain the wisdom of generations passed down to us, and they can help us lead good, directed, and satisfying lives. But there came a point in my life when I began to wonder, who am I in all of this? Where do I fit in? How do I begin to extract myself from all the stuff that others have packed in my suitcase? Whose position am I really defending? And I realized that the only way I could find out was to repack my suitcase for myself. It was as simple as that. I would open it up and, so to speak, dump everything out and begin the slow process of checking out what was inside. And I would keep what I thought was valuable. After all, we all have some wonderful stuff packed in our suitcases which we would never want to give up. And I would toss out those items which no longer made sense to me and which I know I would never use. Why lug around stuff we'll never use? And finally, I would begin methodically to pack in my own effects. Because I believe the greatest adventure of a human life, any human life, the sum of all of our experiences, is to repack our suitcases for ourselves so we can feel comfortable with what we're carrying, and that what we're carrying is in harmony with who we are and who we are becoming. And that brings me back to dialogue and why I said dialogue is a way of life. Because as somebody once said, it's not a question of being right, it's a question of getting it right. And if somebody is able to help us alter or adjust the way we think or feel about something, we should quietly thank them. They have helped us repack our suitcases. They have helped us in our journey towards clarity in our lives. As we begin to listen to others in the America I Want dialogue, ask yourself, is there anything that others are saying that might help you repack your suitcase? We mostly think we're right and want to defend our positions. That's normal. But again, as I said, it's not a question of being right. What we really want is to get it right.